Just as God began to speak to Moses from the cloud in Exodus 24:16, now at the Mount of Transfiguration, the voice of God booms from the cloud. This is my beloved Son with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. The statement is a repetition of the baptism formula that we saw in Matthew 3:17, carrying the same weight of Old Testament expectations mentioned above in Genesis 22, Psalm 2:7, Isaiah 42, with the addition, this time, of listen to him, akuete autu. The added command provides perhaps another link to Moses. In Deuteronomy 18:15 through 22, God promises to raise up a prophet like Moses, issuing the command to Israel, you shall listen to him. And the Septuagint of Deuteronomy 18:15 has autu akuseste. The promise of the prophet is linked to Sinai as God describes the prophet as his answer to the nation's cries for a mediator. Indeed, this prophet like Moses came to be understood as a messianic figure who would possess unique authority, speaking with God not like other prophets in dreams, visions, and dark sayings, but rather mouth to mouth. Compare this with Numbers 12, 6 through 8, just as Moses did. The words of this prophet carry Sinai-level weight and authority. God would put his words in his mouth, and he would only speak what God commanded him, and people would be judged based on their obedience to his words. The New Testament sees Jesus as this prophet, and it appears that Matthew is highlighting the connection here at the Transfiguration. And to summarize the Transfiguration, the events leading up to the Transfiguration include high Christological affirmations of the identity of the Son, followed by Yeshua revealing for the first time in Matthew that he would be rejected, suffer, die, and rise again. This led to a tense exchange, concluding with Yeshua's stern rebuke of Peter, a teaching on the cost of discipleship, and a promise that the disciples would see the Son of Man coming in glory, some even before their death. As Yeshua brings his inner circle up the mountain, the glory of the Son is revealed as his appearance is transfigured. The entire event is rich with Sinai imagery, as Moses and Elijah appear speaking with the Messiah, and Peter attempts to construct 3 sacred tents. The bright cloud that envelops them is reminiscent of the divine presence of God in the cloud in the Tanakh, much like the Holy Spirit. The Father's declaration from the cloud is a reiteration of the earlier baptism affirmations of Yeshua's identity as the servant, his beloved royal Davidic son, and now also the prophet like Moses, whose words carry the weight of divine authority and judgment. So by this point, I hope what we're seeing is, again, what I mentioned earlier. These events, they are precipitated by questions about Yeshua's identity. Who is he? Who is he? And what they reveal is not just the identity of Yeshua as like the lightning rod upon which all of these Old Testament types and prophecies find their fullness. So the royal, the son of David, okay, the Messiah, the Son of God, and the prophet like Moses, and the suffering servant. If these are like lightning strikes of expectation and prophecy from the Old Testament, they find their fullness as they strike the same lightning rod, Yeshua himself. Okay, so this is what's revealed, and in the process of these questions about Yeshua's identity being answered, we see the triune God. Okay, we see the triune God at work. And now to the crucifixion. So the context of the crucifixion. If the baptism and the transfiguration can be characterized as positive and glorious demonstrations of the triune God at work, the crucifixion is dark and frantic, containing a series of stark contrasts with the aforementioned Trinitarian events, while resulting in a glorious demonstration of the triune God at work. The events preceding the crucifixion reflect an incredibly high level of intensity and conflict. Jerusalem was flooded with thousands of pilgrims who had journeyed to the city for the Passover feast. Messianic fervor permeated the crowds as questions concerning the identity of Yeshua swirled. Beginning in Matthew 27:11, one of these identifying questions comes to the fore and remains a prominent theme throughout the crucifixion account as Pontius Pilate queried Yeshua, "Are you the King of the Jews?" Beyond Yeshua's short, simple affirmation and response, "It is as you say," he remains silent in the face of a litany of false accusations concerning his identity. The chief priests and elders led the charge in ridiculing and rejecting the Messiah, choosing the murderer Barabbas for release over Yeshua, collectively calling on Pilate to crucify him. The mockery continued as Roman soldiers scourged, tortured, and humiliated Yeshua with a crown of thorns on his head and a reed in his hand, kneeling down and declaring, "Hail, King of the Jews." As he was taken to be crucified, they put a sign above his head that read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." As he hung on the cross, the two thieves crucified next to him joined the crowds of passersby and the chief priests, scribes, and elders in hurling insults at Yeshua directed at his identity claims. "If you are the Son of God," Matthew 27:40. "He is the King of Israel. Let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe in him," Matthew 27:42. "He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now, if he delights in him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God,' Matthew 27:43. The irony in these accusations is that the accusers present a twisted high Christology. He is the King of the Jews. He is the Son of God. The Father does delight in him. The scoffers acknowledge the claims and the ramifications of each, but lack faith in their validity as applied to Yeshua." This is, very much a contrast with Peter and John earlier. Yeshua's response, rather than engaging with them, is to remain silent, like a lamb that is led to slaughter. The Trinitarian shape of the crucifixion is evident in the submission of the Son, the yielding up of his Spirit upon death, and the silence of the Father. While it may appear that the activity of the triune God is disjointed or lacking at the cross, a closer look shows that the opposite is true. So the submission of the Son on the cross. It is on the cross where the submission of the Son is most evident, where Isaiah's vivid descriptions of what the servant would endure come to pass. By oppression and judgment, he was taken away, and he silently submitted, rendering his life as a guilt offering, being cut off out of the land of the living for the sake of Isaiah's people to whom the stroke was due. The agony endured was both physical and spiritual. The anguish of his soul bellows out in his cries to God. Matthew's only recorded words of Yeshua from the cross, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," that is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" This quote from Psalm 22:1 captures the internal torment Yeshua experienced in that moment. At the end of 3 hours of darkness that had fallen over the land from the 6th to the 9th hours, Yeshua knows the abandonment of the Father. His appeals to my God, reflect his ongoing faith in his affirmation that God is still his God. But it also shows the distance in their relationship at this moment. This is the only time in Matthew where Yeshua does not address God as Father. Yeshua has progressively been abandoned by his people, by his disciples, by the crowds, and now apparently by the Father. As the onlookers are confused by his statement, thinking that he was calling for Elijah, Yeshua performs his final act of submission. He cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. Now the Spirit released and the cosmos respond. While the Holy Spirit is not explicitly mentioned, again, Yeshua yields up his spirit, afeken ta pneuma, at the moment of his death, mirroring the Spirit of God descending upon him at his baptism.